Princess Hana lay in her medical chamber, staring at the ceiling she had memorized over 20 years of her life. The soft blue light from the healing machines painted patterns on the white walls. She couldn't remember a time when she wasn't connected to these machines, when tubes and wires weren't part of her body. Outside her window, the capital city of the Velthir Empire stretched endlessly. Towers of crystalline light reached toward the purple sky. Ships moved between buildings like silver fish in an ocean. Her people, the Velthir, had conquered half the galaxy with their minds and their technology. They could move objects with thought alone. They could speak across star systems without machines. They were powerful beyond measure, but they were fragile. So very fragile. Hana was more fragile than most. Her bones were like thin glass. Her muscles couldn't support her own weight for more than a few minutes. The doctor said it was a genetic disorder, something that made her condition even worse than normal Velthir weakness. She had lived her entire life in this room or rooms like it, always monitored, always protected, always dying slowly. Her mother, Empress Bora, visited every day. She would sit beside the chamber and hold Hana's hand through the barrier field. She would tell her daughter about court politics, about the war with the Kravik horde, about everything happening in the Empire. But Hana could see the sadness in her mother's eyes. The Empress had 3 children. 2 of them were healthy. 1 was not. The war with the Kravik was not going well. The Velthir could win any battle in space. Their ships were faster, their weapons stronger, their tactics superior. But when the Kravik landed on planets, when they sent their warriors into cities and tunnels, the Velthir couldn't fight them. The Kravik were massive creatures, 7 feet tall with thick armor-like skin. They loved violence. They lived for battle. And when they met the Velthir face to face, the Velthir died easily. Hana's brother Taman commanded one of the fleets. He was everything a Velthir prince should be. Strong psychic abilities, brilliant tactical mind. He believed the Velthir would win through technology and mental power alone, as they always had. Her sister Jiwan worked in the research division, developing new weapons. She rarely visited Hana, too busy with her work. The alarm chimed softly. Time for another treatment. Hana closed her eyes as the machines hummed to life, sending medicine through her veins. She wondered, not for the first time, what the point was. She couldn't leave this room. She couldn't contribute to her empire. She was just a burden, kept alive by machines and her mother's love. Then everything changed. The medical staff brought news that made the entire palace talk. A human had been captured. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. Primitives from a backwater world who somehow had spread to a few dozen systems. They had no psychic powers. Their technology was centuries behind. But they were strange. They didn't break easily. Hana became curious when she heard the guards talking. They said the human had fought 12 Kravik warriors before being captured. 12. That was impossible. Even Velthir soldiers in combat armor couldn't manage such a thing. The human had no armor, just basic weapons, and he had survived. She used her access codes to view the detention center cameras. It took her 3 days to find the right feeds, but she found him. The human was in a training cell, the kind they used for prisoners before deciding their fate. He was exercising. Hana watched in fascination. The human moved in ways she had never seen before. He lifted his own body weight repeatedly. He moved quickly, fluidly, like violence made into art. His body was covered in scars, marks of past injuries that had healed. The Velthir body didn't heal like that. Velthir bones broke and stayed weak. Velthir cuts became permanent damage. This human wore his wounds like medals. His name was Doyun. She learned this from the detention records. He was a mercenary, someone who fought for money. He had been caught during a raid on a Velthir mining station, though he claimed he didn't know his employers were targeting Velthir interests. He was scheduled for interrogation and then deportation. Hana made a decision that would change everything. She used her royal authority to request a meeting with the prisoner. The Security Council objected. Her mother objected. Her brother Taman was furious, saying she was wasting time on a primitive alien, but Hana was a princess. They couldn't refuse her completely. They brought Doyen to a secure meeting room connected to her medical wing. He stood on one side of a force field. She lay in her mobile medical chamber on the other. He looked at her with dark eyes that held no pity. That was the first thing she noticed. Everyone looked at her with pity. This human just looked curious. You wanted to see me, princess? He asked in accented but understandable Velthir language. They had been teaching him during his detention. I saw you training, Hana said. Her voice was weak from disuse. You move like nothing I've ever seen. I move like a human, Doyen replied with a small smile. Nothing special about it. It's special to me. Hana paused, gathering courage for what she was about to ask. I want you to train me. The silence that followed was heavy. Doyen stared at her. Then he looked at the medical chamber, at the tubes and wires, at her thin arms barely thicker than the bones inside them. Train you? He repeated. Yes, make me strong like you. Doyen shook his head. Princess, I don't think you understand. Training like I do would kill you. Your body can't handle it. My body is killing me anyway, Hana said quietly. The doctors say I have maybe 5 more years. Maybe less. I've spent my whole life in this chamber, watching my empire fight a war I can't help with. I want to be useful. I want to be strong. Even if it's just for a little while. Your family would never allow it. I'll make them allow it. Hana looked directly at him. Train me and I'll give you your freedom. Full pardon, a ship, money, whatever you need to go wherever you want. Doyen was quiet for a long moment. He studied her face, searching for something. Finally, he spoke. You'll die, he said simply. The first week of real training will probably kill you. Then I die trying to be something more than this. Hana gestured at her chamber. That's better than dying here having done nothing. Something changed in Doyen's expression. A kind of respect, maybe. He nodded slowly. All right, princess. If you can convince them to let me train you, I'll do it. But I won't go easy on you. I won't hold back. Either you'll get stronger or you'll break. There's no middle ground, I understand, do you? Doyen leaned closer to the force field. Because when you're crying from pain, when your body is screaming at you to stop, when every part of you wants to quit, I won't let you. I'll push you harder. That's what training means. That's what strength costs. Hana met his eyes and didn't look away. I'm ready. It took 3 weeks of arguing with her mother, with the medical council, with her brother. Taman called her insane. The doctors said it was suicide. Her mother cried. But Hana refused to back down. This was her life, her body, her choice. Finally, Empress Bora agreed. She made Doyen sign contracts. If Hana died, he would be executed. If she was permanently injured worse than she already was, he would spend his life in a labor camp. But if he succeeded, if he somehow made her stronger, he would have his freedom and his reward. Doyen agreed to the terms. On the first day of training, they moved Hana to a specially prepared room. Medical staff waited nearby, ready to intervene if necessary. Doyen stood in the center of the room in simple training clothes. Hana disconnected from her chamber and tried to stand. She lasted 4 minutes before collapsing. Doyen caught her before she hit the floor, his strong arms supporting her weight easily. Okay, he said quietly. That's our starting point. Tomorrow we try for 5 minutes. Hana nodded, already exhausted, already in pain. But for the first time in her life, she felt hope. The first week was agony beyond anything Hana had imagined. Doyen didn't believe in starting slow. On day 2, when she managed to stand for 6 minutes, he made her try to walk. 3 steps. That was all she managed before her legs gave out. He caught her again, set her back on her feet and made her try again. By day 3, she was vomiting from the effort. Her body, unused to any kind of exertion, rebelled against everything he asked it to do. The medical staff watched nervously through the observation windows. Several times they almost intervened, but Doyen waved them back. He knew exactly how far he could push without causing permanent damage. On day 5, disaster struck. Hana was attempting a simple exercise, just raising her arms above her head repeatedly. On the 15th repetition, she heard a crack. Pain exploded in her right wrist. She had fractured it. The doctors rushed in immediately. They wanted to stop the training permanently. Hana, tears streaming down her face from the pain, refused. She looked at Doyen through her tears and shook her head. Keep going, she whispered. The medical team used their advanced healing technology to repair the fracture. It took 12 hours. When Hana woke up, Doyen was sitting beside her bed, studying a holographic display of Veltir anatomy. I've been thinking, he said without looking at her. Your people's bones are weak because they've never been stressed. On my world, we have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Your medical technology is incredible. You can heal almost anything. So maybe the answer isn't to avoid breaking. Maybe the answer is to break in a controlled way and let your body rebuild stronger. Hana blinked. That sounds insane. Most of my ideas do. Doyen finally looked at her. But think about it. Human bones work that way naturally. When we stress them, tiny fractures form. When they heal denser, stronger. Your technology could accelerate that process. We just need to find the right balance. He brought his theory to the medical team. Most of them thought he was crazy. But one doctor, an older Veltir named Hyon, found the idea intriguing. He began working with Doyen to develop a new protocol. They would deliberately stress Hana's bones and muscles in controlled ways. The medical nanites would heal the damage, but they would be programmed to reinforce the areas that had been damaged, making them stronger. It will be extremely painful, Hyun warned Hana. More painful than anything you've experienced so far. I don't care, Hana replied. She had made her choice. The new training program began. Doyen would push Hana until her body started to fail. Not completely, just enough to cause micro-damage. Then the medical team would heal her with their advanced technology, and she would rest. Then they would do it again. And again, the pain was constant. Hana spent her nights crying into her pillow. Her muscles felt like they were on fire. Her bones ached constantly. Several times she wanted to quit, wanted to return to her comfortable medical chamber and accept her fate. But every time she thought about quitting, she looked at Doyen. He never showed sympathy. He never offered comfort, but he was always there, pushing her, believing she could do more than she thought possible. Pain is just information, he told her during one particularly difficult session. Your body is telling you it's working. Listen to it, understand it, but don't let it control you. Her brother Taemin visited occasionally, always with disgust on his face. He couldn't understand why she was destroying herself like this. You're a princess of the Velthir Empire, he said coldly. Not some primitive warrior. This is beneath your dignity. This is my choice, Hana replied, her voice stronger than it had been before. I'd rather be strong than dignified. Her sister Jiwon was more supportive, though she expressed it in her own way. She began sneaking extra medical supplies to Hana's room. Advanced healing nanites that weren't in the official protocol. Nutrient supplements designed for soldiers. She never said much, just left the supplies and departed. But Hana understood. Jiwon was helping in the only way she knew how. Empress Bora visited less frequently now. It hurt her too much to see her daughter in constant pain. When she did visit, she would sit silently, holding Hana's hand, tears running down her face. I can stop this any time, she told Hana. Just say the word. No, mother. Hana always replied. I need to do this. As weeks turned into months, something remarkable happened. The changes were slow, almost invisible at first. But Hana began to notice differences. Standing didn't hurt as much. Walking became easier. Her muscles, once barely visible beneath her skin, began to develop definition. By the end of the second month, Hana could run for 30 seconds without collapsing. Doyen celebrated by making her run for 45 seconds the next day. By the third month, she could throw a punch without breaking her hand. It wasn't a strong punch by any standard, but it was something. Doyen started teaching her actual fighting techniques, simple movements that human children learned. He taught her about balance, about using her whole body instead of just her arms. He taught her about footwork, about staying mobile. He showed her how to fall without getting hurt, how to roll with impacts instead of resisting them. Fighting isn't about being the strongest, Doyen explained during one lesson. It's about being smart, being fast, and never giving up. Humans aren't the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the fastest or the toughest, but we're really good at refusing to quit. That's what makes us dangerous. Hana absorbed everything. She had always been intelligent, a trait common among the Velthir. But now she was applying that intelligence to something new, the art of physical combat. She began studying human history on her own. She read about warriors from Earth, about cultures that valued physical prowess. She learned about soldiers who fought against impossible odds. She discovered that humans had spent their entire existence fighting, competing, pushing their bodies to the limit. It was in their nature. The Velthir had evolved differently. For thousands of years they had relied on their minds. Physical strength had become unnecessary. Their bodies had grown weak because they didn't need to be strong. But maybe they could be strong again. Maybe evolution could go in reverse if pushed hard enough. By the fourth month, Hana's transformation was becoming visible to others. The servants whispered about it. The guards watched her training sessions with curiosity instead of pity. She no longer needed the medical chamber for more than a few hours each day. She could walk around her room freely. She could eat meals sitting up instead of lying down. Her body was still slender, still delicate compared to most species. But there was a hardness to her now, a physical presence that hadn't existed before. Her arms showed muscle definition. Her legs could support her weight without trembling. She had gained almost 15 pounds, all of it functional muscle and denser bone. Doyen started teaching her more advanced techniques. He showed her pressure points on the Kravik body, places where even a weak strike could cause serious damage. He taught her about weapons, how to use a blade or a shock stick. He trained her in tactics, explaining how a smaller fighter could defeat a larger one through speed and precision. "You're never going to be able to match a Kravik in raw strength," he told her. "So don't try. Be faster, be smarter. Hit them where it hurts and keep moving. That's how you survive." One day, during the 5th month, something happened that changed everything. There was an incident in the palace. A group of Kravik agents had infiltrated the security perimeter, planning to assassinate members of the royal family. Alarms blared through the building. Hana was in her training room when the attack began. Doyen immediately moved to secure the area, expecting to defend her position until security forces arrived. But Hana didn't hide. She picked up a practice weapon and stood beside him. "What are you doing?" Doyen asked. "I'm done hiding," Hana replied. Before he could argue, the door exploded inward. 3 Kravik warriors charged through the smoke, their weapons raised. Doyen engaged the first one. The second one targeted him from another angle. The third one saw Hana and laughed, a deep rumbling sound. To this Kravik, she was just another weak Veltir, prey waiting to be slaughtered. He rushed at her, massive and confident. Hana moved. Not like a Veltir, like Doyen had taught her. She sidestepped the charge, used the Kravik's own momentum against him. She struck at his knee joint with her practice weapon. The Kravik stumbled. She struck again at his neck, at his eye ridge, at every vulnerable spot Doyen had made her memorize. The Kravik was confused. This wasn't how Veltir fought. They should be running, screaming, dying easily. But this one moved like something else, something dangerous. Hana couldn't overpower him. But she didn't need to. She just needed to survive until help arrived. She dodged his attacks, struck at vulnerable points, stayed mobile. The Kravik grew frustrated, then angry, then sloppy. When security forces finally arrived and killed the Kravik warriors, they found Hana still standing, breathing hard, wounded, but alive. The Kravik she had been fighting had multiple injuries. He hadn't defeated her, she hadn't won, but she hadn't lost either. And for a Veltir facing a Kravik in single combat, not losing was basically a miracle. The news spread through the palace like wildfire. The frail princess had fought a Kravik and survived. It seemed impossible, but the security footage proved it. Hana sat in the medical bay afterward, being treated for her injuries. Nothing serious, just bruises and cuts. The medical team work 6 months had passed since Hana began training. The Kravik horde had taken 3 more Veltir systems in that time. Every week brought news of another defeat on the ground. The Veltir could hold space, but they couldn't hold planets once the Kravik landed their troops. The military was desperate. They had tried everything. Better armor, stronger weapons, combat robots. Nothing worked. The Kravik lived for battle in a way the Veltir simply didn't understand. Fighting was in their blood, their culture, their very souls. The Veltir fought with logic and tactics. The Kravik fought with fury and joy. Hana was different now. The change wasn't just physical, though her body had transformed in ways that amazed the medical staff. She had gained 30 pounds of muscle. Her bone density was higher than any Veltir on record. She could run for hours without stopping. She could lift weights that would have crushed her old body. But the real change was deeper. Something in her eyes had hardened. She moved differently with a predator's awareness. When she entered a room, people noticed. Not because she was a princess, but because she radiated something the Veltir had almost forgotten. Physical danger. Doyen had stopped treating her like a fragile student. Now they sparred seriously, and sometimes she actually managed to land hits on him. He taught her everything he knew, hand-to-hand combat, weapon techniques, tactical thinking. He showed her how to fight multiple opponents, how to use the environment as a weapon, how to turn an enemy's strength against them. More importantly, he taught her the psychology of violence. The Velthir had never needed to understand aggression. They had always relied on technology and psychic power to dominate others. But Doyen showed Hana that violence had its own language, its own logic. Fear is a tool, he explained during one training session. Your enemy needs to believe you're dangerous. If they hesitate even for a second, that's when you strike. Confidence wins fights before they even start. Hana also discovered something unexpected. Her psychic abilities, which had always been weak because of her illness, were getting stronger. The doctors theorized that her improved physical health was allowing her mind to function better. Whatever the reason, she could now sense emotions from people nearby. She could sometimes predict movements before they happened. Combining her emerging psychic abilities with her physical training created something unique. She could sense an opponent's intention and react before they even moved. It gave her an edge that neither pure fighters nor pure psychics possessed. News of her survival against the Kravik infiltrator had spread throughout the palace. Some people were inspired. Others were disturbed. The idea of a Velthir princess learning to fight like a barbarian upset the traditionalists. They believed it degraded their entire civilization. Her brother Taman was among the most vocal critics. He came to watch one of her training sessions, his face twisted with disgust. Look at yourself, he said coldly. You've turned yourself into something crude and ugly. You think you're strong, but you've just lowered yourself to the level of primitives. Hana, sweating from her workout, faced him calmly. I'm not ugly. I'm functional. There's a difference. You're an embarrassment to our family. I'm alive, and I can defend myself. That's more than most Velthir can say. Taman left without another word, his anger barely controlled. Hana knew he saw her as a threat now, not just to tradition but to his own position. He was the heir to the throne, the perfect Velthir prince, and here was his sick little sister, becoming something he couldn't understand or control. Not everyone reacted negatively. Common soldiers started requesting permission to watch her training. Young Velthir, especially those in the military, looked at her with something like hope. If the frail princess could become strong, maybe they could too. Empress Bora's reaction was complicated. She was proud of her daughter's determination, but scared of what it meant. One evening, she visited Hana in her quarters. You've proven your point, the Empress said quietly. You're stronger now. You can walk, run, even fight. Maybe it's time to stop, before you push too far. Mother, I've barely started. Hana sat down beside her. This isn't just about me anymore. Don't you see? If I can change, others can too. We could train soldiers like me. We could actually fight the Kravik on equal terms. Or you could die trying. The Kravik are monsters, Hana. They've been warriors for thousands of years. And we've been scholars for thousands of years. Maybe it's time we remembered how to be both. The conversation ended without resolution, but Hana could see her mother thinking, calculating. The Empress was desperate enough to consider anything that might help the Empire. 2 days later, everything changed. A Kravik raiding party breached the outer palace defenses during a ceremonial event. It was a bold attack, well planned and executed. The Kravik wanted to spread fear, to prove that nowhere in the Velthir Empire was safe. Security forces responded quickly, but the Kravik were already inside the main building. They moved through corridors, killing guards, destroying equipment. Their goal was the royal family. Hana was in the training room with Doyun when the alarm sounded. This time there was no debate. She grabbed her weapon, a shock blade designed for her size and strength, and headed toward the fighting. Stay close, Doyun ordered, moving ahead of her. Don't be a hero. We're just trying to survive until reinforcements arrive. They encountered the first Kravik in a grand hallway, lined with portraits of past empresses. The creature was enormous, nearly 7 feet tall, with thick red skin and natural armor plates on its shoulders and back. It carried a massive axe that could cut a Velthir in half. The Kravik saw them and roared, charging forward. Doyen met it head-on, his combat experience evident in every movement. But even he struggled against the creature's raw power. A second Kravik appeared behind the first, targeting Doyen from another angle. The human would be overwhelmed in seconds. Hana moved without thinking. She engaged the second Kravik, using everything Doyen had taught her. The creature laughed at first, amused by the tiny Velthir who dared to challenge it. That amusement died quickly. Hana was fast. Faster than any Velthir the Kravik had encountered. She used her shock blade to strike at vulnerable points, joints, eyes, the soft tissue under the arm. She didn't try to overpower the creature. She just kept moving, kept striking, kept the Kravik off balance. Her psychic sense warned her of attacks before they came. She dodged a strike that would have taken her head off. She rolled under a horizontal swing and came up striking at the Kravik's knee. The creature stumbled, confused by this strange opponent who fought like nothing it had seen before. The fight felt like it lasted forever, though it was probably less than 2 minutes. Hana's body screamed with exhaustion. The Kravik was wounded but far from defeated. But she had bought time. Security forces arrived, their heavy weapons cutting down both Kravik warriors. Hana collapsed against the wall, her chest heaving. Every muscle burned. She had cuts and bruises everywhere. But she was alive, and she had fought a Kravik warrior in single combat and held her ground. Doyen finished his opponent and rushed to her side. "Are you hurt?" "Everything hurts," Hana gasped. "But I'm okay." More Kravik were found throughout the palace. The attack had been larger than initially thought. 12 enemy warriors had infiltrated the grounds. All were killed, but not before taking the lives of 30 Veltir guards and servants. The Empire mourned the dead. But they also talked about something else, the princess who fought. Security footage of Hana's battle spread through the military networks. Soldiers who had never believed the stories suddenly had proof. A Veltir had stood against a Kravik and survived. Not just survived. She had fought well enough to wound the creature, to give the security forces time to respond. For a civilization that had been losing ground war after ground war, it was a revelation. 3 days after the attack, Empress Bora called an emergency meeting of her military council. Hana was summoned to attend along with Doyen. The room was filled with admirals and generals, the highest-ranking officers in the Veltir military. The Empress stood at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. "We've been fighting the Kravik for 3 years. In that time, we've lost 16 systems and countless lives. Our ships can defeat theirs. Our technology is superior, but on the ground we can't win. Every planet they invade becomes theirs." She gestured to Hana. "My daughter has shown us something we had forgotten. Physical strength is not beneath us. It's a tool like any other. And right now we need that tool." One of the older generals, a traditionalist named Quan, spoke up. "Your Majesty, with respect, one success doesn't prove anything. Princess Hana is remarkable, but she's one person. We can't build a military strategy around an anomaly." "Then we make more anomalies," the Empress replied. "We train volunteers the way Hana was trained. We create soldiers who can fight the Kravik on their own terms." The room erupted in debate. Half the officers supported the idea. The other half thought it was madness, a waste of resources that would produce nothing. The argument went on for hours. Finally, the Empress raised her hand for silence. "I'm authorizing a pilot program. 100 volunteers. If this works, we expand it. If it fails, we try something else." But the Phoenix Initiative was officially announced 3 weeks after the palace attack. The name came from an ancient human myth that Doyen had shared with Hana, a story about a bird that died and was reborn from its own ashes. It seemed fitting for what they were trying to do, rebirth the Veltir as warriors. The announcement created chaos across the Empire. Half the population saw it as necessary evolution. The other half saw it as the death of Veltir culture. Protests erupted in major cities. Some demanded the program be expanded immediately. Others demanded it be stopped before it corrupted their entire civilization. The military put out a call for volunteers. Requirements were strict: young, healthy, and willing to endure extreme physical stress. They expected maybe a few hundred applicants. They received over 10,000 in the first week. The selection process was brutal. Medical examinations eliminated most candidates immediately. The Veltir body was simply too fragile for what the program demanded. Out of 10,000 applicants, only 200 passed the initial screening. From those, Doyen and Hana selected 100 for the first training class. Among the selected was Captain Minho, a fleet officer who had watched his entire ship's crew get slaughtered when Kravik warriors boarded their vessel. He was the only survivor. The experience had changed him, filled him with a burning need for revenge. He looked at Hana during the orientation meeting with eyes that held both hope and desperation. Another volunteer was Yunji, a common-born soldier from the outer colonies. She had grown up hearing stories about the Kravik attacks. She had lost her parents to a raid when she was young. She saw the Phoenix Initiative as her chance to become someone who could fight back, to make sure no other children lost their families the way she had. The training facility was built in a remote location, away from the capital's political drama. It was designed specifically for the program. Reinforced walls, advanced medical bay, living quarters that could support 100 trainees. Doyen insisted on keeping it separate from regular military bases. He wanted the trainees focused, not distracted by outside opinions. The first day was designed to break illusions. Many volunteers arrived thinking they were already tough, already prepared. Doyen showed them how wrong they were. The warm-up exercises alone left half of them vomiting or collapsed on the floor. "This is the easy part," Doyen announced to the group, his voice carrying across the training hall. "This is just to see what you can currently do. Actual training starts tomorrow." That night, 20 volunteers quit. They returned to their regular military posts, unable to face what the program demanded. Doyen let them go without comment. He had no use for people who gave up before the real work began. The remaining 80 settled into a brutal routine. Wake at dawn, physical training for 3 hours, medical treatment, classroom sessions on combat theory, more physical training, weapons practice, tactical exercises. The days blurred together in a haze of pain and exhaustion. Hana was there every day, demonstrating techniques, pushing alongside them, showing them that it was possible. She had an advantage, having trained for months before them, but she never held that over them. Instead, she used it to inspire them, to show them what they could become. The medical protocol developed for Hana was adapted for the group. Controlled stress on bones and muscles, followed by accelerated healing. The process was agony, but it worked. Slowly, over weeks and months, the trainees began to change. Minho threw himself into the training with single-minded intensity. He trained harder than anyone else, pushed himself further, accepted more pain. Doyen had to actually order him to rest sometimes, concerned the man would injure himself permanently through overtraining. "Why are you here?" Doyen asked him one evening after forcing him to stop training for the day. "Because I need to kill them," Minho replied simply. "The Kravik took my crew. They took my friends. I need to be strong enough to make them pay." "Revenge is a poor teacher," Doyen said. "It makes you reckless. Then I'll learn to be controlled in my revenge." Yoonji approached training differently. She wasn't driven by rage like Minho. She was methodical, patient, treating every lesson like a puzzle to be solved. She studied the recordings of Hana's fights, analyzing every movement. She asked endless questions about technique and tactics. "You're thinking too much," Hana told her during a sparring session. "Fighting isn't just about technique. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts." "I don't trust my instincts," Yoonji admitted. "I trust preparation." "Then prepare your instincts," Hana suggested. "Train until the right responses become automatic." The trainees began to bond through their shared suffering. They pushed each other, supported each other, competed with each other. A culture developed within the program, something that mixed Velthir discipline with human-style warrior spirit. Not everyone at the palace approved. Prince Taemin watched the program's progress with growing concern. He saw it as a corruption of everything the Velthir represented. Worse, he saw his sister becoming more influential, more respected among the military. If the Phoenix Initiative succeeded, Hana's status would rise dramatically. She might even challenge his position as heir. Taemin began working behind the scenes, reaching out to other traditionalists in the government and military. He built a coalition of people who feared change, who wanted the Velthir to remain as they had always been. They couldn't stop the Phoenix Initiative directly, not while the Empress supported it. But they could undermine it, create obstacles, wait for it to fail. Meanwhile, the Kravik horde continued its advance. Intelligence reports suggested they were planning something big, a major offensive that would strike deep into Velthir territory. The military prepared for a massive fleet battle, calling in ships from across the empire. But rumors reached the Phoenix training facility that changed everything. The Kravik weren't just planning a fleet battle. They were planning a ground invasion of a major Velthir world, Velthara, a mining planet with a population of 3 million. If they succeeded, it would be the largest Velthir population center ever captured. Doyun and Hana brought the intelligence to Empress Bora. The three of them met in private, away from the full military council. "The Phoenix trainees aren't ready," Doyun said bluntly. They've been training for 4 months. They're better than regular Veltir soldiers, but they're not ready to face a full Kravik assault. When will they be ready? The Empress asked. Another 6 months. Maybe more. We don't have 6 months. The attack on Velthara could happen any day. Hana spoke up. What if we don't wait? What if we send them anyway? Both the Empress and Doyen looked at her in surprise. They'll die, Doyen said flatly. Maybe, Hana agreed. But they'll die anyway if they're not tested in real combat. And if we don't defend Velthara, 3 million civilians will die or become slaves. At least this way they die fighting. The Empress closed her eyes, the weight of leadership visible on her face. How many trainees would you commit? 20, Hana said immediately. Our best fighters. Led by Minho and Yunji and me. No, the Empress said. You're too valuable to risk. Mother, I'm only valuable because I've proven this works. If I don't fight beside them, what message does that send? That it's okay for common soldiers to die but not for princesses? The argument continued for hours. Eventually, exhausted and desperate, the Empress agreed. 20 Phoenix warriors would deploy to Velthara. Hana would lead them. Doyen would serve as tactical advisor. If they succeeded, the program would be expanded immediately. If they failed, the Phoenix initiative would likely be cancelled, seen as a failed experiment. When Hana announced the deployment to the trainees, the response was immediate. Everyone wanted to go. They had to hold a competition to select the 20 best warriors. Minho and Yunji were obvious choices, ranking first and second in combat evaluations. The other 18 were selected based on their performance in training exercises. The 60 trainees who weren't selected were devastated. They had worked just as hard, suffered just as much. But they weren't quite ready yet. Doyen promised them their chance would come. For now, they would continue training while their comrades went to war. The night before deployment, Hana couldn't sleep. She walked through the training facility, looking at the equipment, the practice weapons, the obstacle courses. In 6 months, this place had become more of a home to her than the palace ever was. She found Minho in the training hall, running through combat forms in the darkness. Can't sleep either, she asked. Too much energy, he replied, not stopping his practice. Too many thoughts. Are you afraid? Minho finally stopped and looked at her. Terrified, but also excited. Finally a chance to fight back. Finally a chance to be more than prey. We might die, Hana said quietly. Everyone dies, but not everyone gets to die fighting. That's a privilege. Hana found Yunji in the library section, reading historical texts about military tactics. She looked up when Hana entered. Preparing? Hana asked. Always preparing, Yunji replied with a small smile. Did you know the Kravik have never been defeated in ground combat by a force smaller than themselves? Every victory against them required overwhelming numbers or orbital bombardment. We'll be the first exception then. Or we'll die proving the historical pattern Velthara was burning when they arrived. The Kravik fleet had broken through the orbital defenses and deployed ground forces across the planet's primary mining continent. Smoke rose from dozens of cities. Velthir military forces fought desperately, but they were losing ground by the hour. The Phoenix transport didn't land at the main military base. Instead, Doyen directed them to a smaller facility on the outskirts of the primary mining complex. The building was critical infrastructure, containing the control systems for half the planet's mining operations. If the Kravik captured it, they could shut down the entire economy. This is our mission, Doyen explained as they prepared to deploy. Hold this facility. Regular military forces are stretched too thin. If we lose this position, we lose the planet's value. The Empress will have to order civilian evacuation, which means abandoning 3 million people to the Kravik. How many Kravik are we expecting? Minho asked. Unknown. Could be a dozen. Could be 100. We have to be ready for anything. The 20 Phoenix warriors disembarked with Hana and Doyen. The facility was defended by 30 regular Velthir soldiers, commanded by an officer named Lieutenant Kangmin. He looked at the Phoenix team with obvious skepticism. You're the special unit? He asked, unable to hide his doubt. You look like civilians with weapons. We look like Velthir, Hana corrected him calmly. Which is what we are. We just know how to fight now. The facility was a complex of low buildings surrounding the central control tower. It had defensive walls, but they were designed to stop industrial accidents, not military assaults. The regular soldiers had set up barriers and weapon emplacements, but their faces showed fear. They had all heard what happened when Kravik got close. Doyen studied the tactical situation and made quick decisions. He positioned Phoenix warriors at key choke points, places where smaller numbers could hold against larger forces. He put Yunji in charge of the eastern approach, where intelligence suggested the Kravik would likely attack first. He assigned Minho to the western perimeter, the most exposed position. "Remember your training," Hana told her team as they moved to positions. "You're faster than they are. You're smarter than they are. Use that. Don't try to match their strength. Outthink them." The first attack came just after nightfall. Sensors detected movement in the darkness. Then the Kravik charged, roaring their battle cries. Massive figures moving with terrifying speed despite their size. 20 Kravik warriors hit the eastern perimeter where Yunji's team was positioned. The regular Velthir soldiers opened fire with energy weapons, dropping 3 Kravik immediately. But the others kept coming, their thick skin absorbing hits that would kill most species. The Kravik reached the defensive barriers. This was usually when Velthir defenders broke and ran, but the Phoenix warriors didn't run. They engaged in close combat, using techniques no Kravik had faced from Velthir before. Yunji moved like water, flowing around attacks, striking at joints and vulnerable spots. The Kravik she faced was confused by this strange opponent who didn't fight like prey. His confusion cost him. Yunji's shock blade found his throat and he fell. The other Phoenix warriors on the eastern perimeter fought with similar effectiveness. They took casualties, 3 warriors falling to Kravik weapons, but they held the line. When the Kravik assault finally broke off, half their force was dead or wounded. The Velthir regular soldiers stared in shock. They had never seen their own kind fight like this. The western perimeter came under attack an hour later. A larger force, maybe 30 Kravik, hit Minho's position. The regular soldiers there panicked immediately, falling back. Minho and his Phoenix team suddenly found themselves alone against overwhelming numbers. "Hold position," Minho shouted. "Make them pay for every step." What followed was a brutal, desperate fight. Minho fought with controlled fury, channeling his rage into precise, deadly movements. He had learned Doyen's lessons well. Anger was a tool, not a weakness. He used it to fuel his combat, to push through pain and exhaustion. A massive Kravik warrior targeted him specifically, recognizing Minho as the leader. The creature was huge even by Kravik standards, covered in scars from countless battles. He swung a warhammer that could crush armor plate. Minho dodged the first swing by inches. The hammer hit the ground where he had been standing, cracking the reinforced concrete. He countered with a strike to the Kravik's knee, then rolled away from a backhanded swing. The Kravik was strong but predictable. Minho could read his movements, anticipate his attacks. The fight lasted 3 minutes, though it felt like hours. Minho was wounded twice, his armor cracked in multiple places. But he kept moving, kept striking, kept refusing to fall. Finally, he found his opening. The Kravik overextended on a swing. Minho's blade found the gap in his natural armor, sliding between armor plates into the soft tissue beneath. The Kravik fell, and with him, the morale of his warriors broke. They had never seen a Velthir kill one of their champions in single combat. The remaining Kravik retreated into the darkness, confused and shaken. Hana had positioned herself at the central building with Doyen and a small reserve force. She watched the battles through surveillance feeds, ready to reinforce whichever position was most threatened. She saw Yunji's team hold the eastern perimeter. She saw Minho's incredible fight against the Kravik champion. Pride swelled in her chest. These warriors, her warriors, were proving everything she and Doyen had worked for. The Velthir could fight. They could win, but the night was far from over. The main Kravik assault came just before dawn. Over 100 warriors, the largest ground force the Kravik had committed to any single target on Velthara. They hit all 3 perimeters simultaneously, trying to overwhelm through sheer numbers. The regular Velthir soldiers broke immediately. Lieutenant Kangmin tried to rally them, but fear overrode training. Most of the regular forces fled toward the transport ships. Only the Phoenix warriors remained, along with a handful of regular soldiers too brave or too stubborn to run. "Fall back to the central building," Doyen ordered. "Controlled retreat. Make them fight for every room." The Phoenix warriors retreated in good order, fighting as they fell back. They turned the facility's corridors into killing grounds, using narrow spaces where Kravik numbers meant nothing. But there were too many enemies. Phoenix warriors fell one by one, buying seconds with their lives. Yunji held a critical junction with two other warriors, allowing the rest of her team to fall back safely. A Kravik blade cut deep into her side. She ignored the pain, continuing to fight. When her teammates were clear, she detonated an explosive charge she had prepared earlier. The blast brought down the corridor ceiling, killing her and the Kravik trying to push through. Hana heard the explosion over the communications network. Heard someone report that Yunji was gone. She felt the loss like a physical blow, but she couldn't afford to mourn. Not yet. Not while others were still fighting. Minho's team was pinned down in the eastern wing. They were out of ammunition for their ranged weapons, reduced to blades and shock sticks. Minho himself was wounded in 3 places, but he kept fighting, kept his team moving. "We need to break out," one of his warriors shouted. "We're trapped." "Then we break their trap," Minho replied. "On my mark, we charge. Don't stop, don't slow down. We punch through or we die trying." They charged into the Kravik line. It was insane, suicidal. Exactly the kind of aggressive tactic the Kravik respected. 3 Phoenix warriors died in the charge, but the rest broke through, reaching the central building where Hana and Doyen were making their final stand. By dawn, only 12 Phoenix warriors remained alive, along with Hana and Doyen. They held the central control room, the most defensible position in the facility. The Kravik surrounded them, but attacking through the narrow access corridors would be costly. A Kravik leader called for a temporary ceasefire. He wanted to speak with whoever commanded the defenders. Hana went to meet him with Doyen at her side. The Kravik was massive, wearing battle armor covered in trophies from defeated enemies. He looked at Hana with what might have been respect. "You fight well for prey," he said in rough Velthir language. "Your warriors have killed many of mine, but you cannot win. Surrender and I will grant you quick deaths." "We don't surrender," Hana replied. "And we're not prey anymore." The Kravik laughed, a sound like thunder. "Brave words, but you are surrounded, outnumbered 10 to 1. You have fought well, but the battle is over." "The battle isn't over until we decide it's over," Doyen said. Before the Kravik could respond, explosions rocked the facility's outer perimeter, orbital strikes from Velthir fleet ships, called in by Lieutenant Kangman before he fled. The bombardment was precise, targeted, hitting Kravik positions while avoiding the central building. The Kravik were caught in the open. The strikes killed dozens of them, scattered their formation. In the chaos, Velthir military reinforcements landed, a full battalion, freed up from other positions by the fleet's arrival in orbit. The Kravik, facing sudden, overwhelming force and unable to retreat to their ships, fought desperately. The battle raged through the facility for another 3 hours. When it finally ended, 2/3 of the Kravik assault force was dead. The rest were captured or had fled into the wilderness. The facility was saved, more importantly the Phoenix warriors. The victory at Velthara changed everything. Within weeks, the Phoenix Initiative received authorization to expand to 5,000 trainees. Military bases across the Empire began implementing the new training protocols. Doyen's methods, once considered barbaric, were now being studied and refined by the Velthir's best military minds. But not everyone celebrated. Prince Taemin watched his sister's rising influence with growing alarm. She was no longer just a princess. She was a military hero, a symbol of the Empire's transformation. Common citizens spoke her name with reverence. Soldiers requested to serve under her command. Even some nobles who had initially opposed the Phoenix Initiative now supported it publicly. Taemin saw his path to the throne narrowing. His mother, Empress Bora, was making comments about succession that troubled him deeply. She spoke of leadership qualities beyond bloodline, of rulers who understood both mind and body, of the need for strength in these dangerous times. She was considering changing the succession, naming Hana as heir instead of him. He couldn't allow that. The Velthir Empire had been ruled by scholar emperors for 10,000 years. To place a warrior on the throne would be to abandon everything their civilization represented. Or so Taemin told himself. But in his private moments, he knew the truth. He wasn't fighting for tradition. He was fighting for power. Taemin began meeting secretly with faction leaders who shared his concerns. Noble families who feared losing their privileged positions. Military officers who resented Doyen's influence. Politicians who saw the Phoenix Initiative as a threat to the existing order. Together, they formed a coalition dedicated to stopping Hana's rise. But how? She was too popular to attack directly. The Phoenix warriors worshipped her. The common people loved her. Any overt move against her would backfire spectacularly. Then intelligence reports provided an opportunity. The Kravik Horde's supreme commander, Warlord Grexith Bonecrusher, was gathering his forces for a massive campaign. His command carrier, the Bloodfang, was moving toward the front lines with an escort of 20 warships. The Imperial Military Council convened to discuss this development. If Grexith could be killed, the Kravik leadership would fracture. The various warlords who served under him barely tolerated each other. Without Grexith's iron fist holding them together, they would turn on each other. The war might end in months instead of years, but killing Grexith was nearly impossible. The Bloodfang was a fortress containing thousands of Kravik warriors. Previous assassination attempts had all failed, usually with total loss of the strike teams. The council debated options, but no one had a realistic plan. That's when Taman made his proposal. The Phoenix warriors, he suggested, could infiltrate the Bloodfang using a captured Kravik transport and forged credentials. They had proven their effectiveness in ground combat. This mission would test whether they could operate behind enemy lines. It was a suicide mission, and everyone in the room knew it. But Taman presented it as the only viable option. If the Phoenix warriors succeeded, the war would effectively be won. If they failed, well, the Empire would lose some special forces troops. Tragic, but acceptable. The room debated for hours. Some officers supported the plan, seeing it as legitimately the best option available. Others were suspicious of Taman's motives but couldn't articulate exactly why. Empress Bora was torn. She didn't want to send her daughter on such a dangerous mission, but she also understood that leaders sometimes had to accept terrible risks. Hana and Doyun were summoned to the council chamber. The mission was explained to them. They could refuse if they wanted. No one would blame them for rejecting such a hopeless operation. "We'll do it," Hana said immediately. Doyun gave her a sharp look. "We need to discuss this privately first." "There's nothing to discuss. This is the mission that could end the war. We have to try." In private, Doyun was more direct. "This smells wrong. Your brother is pushing this mission harder than anyone. Why? What does he gain from sending you into a Kravik warship? He gains the same thing we all gain if we succeed, an end to the war. And if we fail, he gains a rival removed from the succession. Think, Hana, this is too convenient." But Hana was determined. She believed, perhaps naively, that her brother might hate her methods but wouldn't actually want her dead. They were family. He was her brother. Despite their differences, surely he wanted her to survive. The mission was scheduled for 2 weeks later. 50 Phoenix warriors would go, the largest operational deployment since Velthara. Hana would lead them. Doyun would serve as tactical advisor. Minho, recovered from his wounds, volunteered immediately. So did many veterans from Velthara, eager to strike at the heart of the Kravik leadership. What no one knew was that Taman had made a secret contact with a Kravik sub-commander named Vokrath. Vokrath served Grexith but had ambitions of his own. Taman sent him intelligence about the coming infiltration attempt, including exact timing and the forged credentials they would use. In exchange, Taman wanted proof that the Phoenix team had been eliminated. He also wanted Vokrath to ensure that no evidence of the betrayal survived. It had to look like the mission simply failed, not that it had been compromised. Vokrath agreed to the arrangement. He had his own plans. If the Phoenix warriors could somehow kill Grexith before dying, Vokrath would be positioned to seize power himself. And if they failed to kill Grexith but managed to wound him, Vokrath could finish the job and claim credit. Either way, he won. The Phoenix team departed on schedule, using a captured Kravik transport modified to mask Velthir life signs. The journey to intercept the Bloodfang took 3 days. During that time, Hana drilled her warriors on the mission plan. They would dock as a returning scout ship. Once aboard, they would fight their way to the command center and kill Grexith. Then they would escape during the chaos, hopefully stealing a smaller ship in the confusion. It was a terrible plan with 100 ways to fail. But it was the only plan they had. Doyun spent the journey watching Hana, seeing her prepare for what might be her last battle. She had come so far from the fragile princess in the medical chamber. She was a warrior now, confident and capable. He felt an unexpected surge of pride followed by a deep sadness. He had trained her to be strong enough to survive, but now that strength was driving her toward a mission that would likely kill her. "Why are you really doing this?" he asked her the night before they reached the Bloodfang. "Because it's right, because it could save millions of lives." Because this is what leaders do. Leaders don't throw their lives away on desperate missions. They do when no one else can. Hana looked at him seriously. You've been a soldier. You understand. Some things are worth dying for. The Bloodfang appeared on their sensors 12 hours later. It was massive, a warship the size of a small city. The escort vessels dwarfed the Phoenix transport. Hana felt her heart pound as they approached the docking bay, using the forged credentials Taman had provided. The credentials worked. That should have been their first warning that something was wrong. But they were committed now, already inside the docking bay. They disembarked in Kravik disguises wearing captured armor modified to fit Velthir bodies. The disguises lasted approximately 30 seconds. Vokrath's warriors were waiting for them, weapons ready. The Phoenix team found themselves ambushed immediately upon leaving their ship. It's a trap, Minho shouted, diving behind cover as energy blasts filled the docking bay. The Phoenix warriors fought desperately, but they were completely exposed. The Kravik had prepared perfect firing positions. In the first minute of combat, 10 Phoenix warriors fell. The survivors fought their way toward any cover they could find, using crashed ships and cargo containers as shelter. Doyen grabbed Hana and pulled her behind a heavy crate. Your brother sold us out, he had to. The Kravik knew exactly when and where we'd arrive. Hana's mind raced. Doyen was right. This wasn't just bad luck. They had been betrayed. By Taman. Her own brother had sent her to die. The realization hurt worse than any physical wound, but she couldn't think about that now. Right now she had to get her warriors out alive. New plan. She shouted over the communications network. We fight our way to the command center anyway. If we're going to die here, we take Grexith with us. It was insane. But it was also the only option. If they tried to retreat to their ship, they'd be cut down in the open docking bay. The only way was forward, deeper into the enemy ship. The Phoenix warriors charged, using every technique they had learned. They were outnumbered 10-1, fighting in enemy territory already wounded and exhausted. By every logical measure, they should have died in minutes. But logic didn't account for human training, Velthir intelligence, and desperate courage. The Phoenix team fought like demons, moving through the ship's corridors in a running battle. They used the Kravik's own tactics against them, turning ambush points into killing grounds, using the ship's narrow passages to negate enemy numbers. Minho led the vanguard, his blade wet with Kravik blood. He had stopped caring about his own survival. All that mattered was the mission. Kill Grexith. Make his death mean something. Make Yunji's sacrifice and all the other fallen warriors count for something. They fought through deck after deck, leaving a trail of dead Kravik behind them. The Phoenix warriors fell, the throne room cleared as Grexith's guards formed a circle for the fight. The surviving Phoenix warriors stood at one side, weapons ready but held low, knowing that interfering would void the agreement. Doyen's face was tight with worry, but he said nothing. This was Hana's choice, her battle. Grexith removed his ceremonial armor, standing in just basic combat gear. Even without the armor, he was massive. 8 feet tall, 300 pounds of muscle and natural armor plating. His arms were thicker than Hana's entire body. He had fought in over 1,000 battles and won them all. Hana looked tiny in comparison, barely 5.5 feet tall, maybe 130 pounds. But she didn't look afraid. She had learned from Doyen that fear was just another sensation, information to be processed and used. She felt it now, acknowledged it, and then set it aside. The fight began without ceremony. Grexith charged with shocking speed for something so large. Hana dodged left, her smaller size allowing quick direction changes. She struck at his knee as she passed, her blade scoring a shallow cut. Grexith barely seemed to notice. He spun faster than she expected, his backhand swing nearly catching her head. She ducked under it, rolled away, came up striking at his ribs. The blade hit armor-thick skin and barely penetrated. Grexith was too tough, too experienced, too strong. You're fast, Grexith acknowledged. But speed alone won't win this fight. He attacked with calculated brutality, each strike designed to force Hana into smaller and smaller spaces. She realized his strategy. He was using his size and reach to control the battlefield, limiting her mobility. Once he cornered her, the fight would end in seconds. Hana shifted tactics. Instead of dodging away, she moved toward him, inside his reach where his size became a disadvantage. She struck at vulnerable points, eyes, throat, joints. Grexith protected himself well, but her speed was creating openings. Then Grexith adapted. He grabbed her during one of her close approaches, his massive hand closing around her arm. He lifted her off the ground effortlessly and threw her across the room. She hit the wall hard, her armor cracking from the impact. Pain exploded through her ribs. She struggled to her feet, tasting blood. Grexith was already closing in, moving to finish the fight. Hana's body screamed at her to stay down, to surrender. But she thought about Doyen's first lesson, back when she could barely stand for 5 minutes. Pain is just information. Don't let it control you, she stood. Grexith paused, showing what might have been respect. You should have stayed down, he said. I don't know how to stay down anymore, Hana replied. The fight continued. Hana was wounded, slowing down, but she refused to quit. She used everything Doyen had taught her. She used her Velthir psychic abilities to predict Grexith's movements a split second before he made them. She combined alien mental powers with human combat techniques, creating a fighting style that had never existed before. Grexith was wounded too now, bleeding from dozens of small cuts. Individually, they meant nothing, but together they were adding up. He was breathing harder, moving slightly slower. The fight had gone on for 10 minutes, far longer than he had expected. You're the best opponent I've faced in a decade, Grexith admitted during a brief pause. But I'm still stronger. I'm still going to win. Maybe, Hana gasped, her lungs burning. But you'll remember this fight for the rest of your life. They clashed again. Grexith caught her with a solid hit that sent her sprawling. She felt ribs crack, felt her left arm go numb. This was it. She couldn't get up from this. Her body had reached its limit. But as she lay there, she thought about everything she had become. She thought about the frail princess in the medical chamber, who wanted to die doing something meaningful. She thought about Yunji's sacrifice at Velthara. She thought about all the Phoenix warriors who had given their lives so the Velthir could learn to be strong. She thought about Doyen's last lesson, the one he had taught her right before this mission. The difference between winning and losing isn't strength or speed or skill. It's the willingness to keep fighting when everything tells you to quit. That's what makes humans dangerous. We're too stupid to know when we're beaten. Hana stood up. One more time. Grexith stared at her in disbelief. How? How are you still standing? Because I'm Velthir, Hana said. We're the smartest species in the galaxy. And I'm human-trained, which means I'm smart enough to know I should quit, and too stubborn to actually do it. She charged, putting everything she had left into one final attack. It wasn't about technique anymore. It wasn't about strategy. It was about pure will, refusing to accept defeat. Grexith met her charge, confident he could end it. But Hana did something unexpected. She used her psychic abilities not to predict his attack, but to project emotion directly into his mind. Fear. The emotion the Kravik valued above all others. The fear of a cornered prey animal that decides to fight instead of flee. Grexith hesitated for just a split second, shocked by the raw emotion being forced into his warrior mind. That hesitation was all Hana needed. Her blade found the gap in his natural armor, sliding between plates into the soft tissue beneath. She drove it deep, then twisted. Grexith staggered back, looking down at the wound in disbelief. It wasn't immediately fatal, but it was serious. Very serious. He sat down heavily on his throne, breathing hard. I yield, he said quietly. The throne room erupted in chaos. Kravik guards moved forward, but Grexith raised his hand, stopping them. She won fairly, he declared. I gave my word. Send the transmission. Vokrath tried to protest, but Grexith silenced him with a look. Honor demands it. You wouldn't understand honor, Vokrath, but I do. The transmission was sent across all Kravik and Velthir communication networks. Complete evidence of Prince Taemon's betrayal. His communications with Vokrath. The deal he had made to sacrifice his sister and her warriors. Everything. Grexith looked at Hana, who had collapsed after her final attack, being tended by Doyen and Minho. You should have killed me when you had the chance. Maybe, Hana replied weakly. But then your warriors would have killed us all. This way everyone lives. You fight like a Kravik, but you think like a Velthir. That combination is dangerous. Grexith coughed, blood on his lips. I'm ordering our forces to withdraw from Velthir space. Not because I fear your empire, but because I respect you. You've earned it. The war is over. He paused, then added, My people will remember you, Princess Hana. The Velthir who refused to die. That's worth more than any battlefield victory. The Phoenix warriors were allowed to leave on their captured transport. They carried Grexith's word of honor and his promise of withdrawal. By the time they reached Velthir space, the entire empire knew what had happened. Taemon's betrayal had been exposed to everyone. His coalition collapsed overnight. Nobles who had supported him rushed to distance themselves. Military officers demanded his arrest. The common people called for his execution. Empress Bora confronted her son in the throne room, her face a mask of cold fury. She had lost faith in him completely. The succession laws were clear about treason. Even a prince could be stripped of everything. Taemon was put on trial. The evidence was overwhelming. He tried to argue that he had acted for the good of the empire, trying to eliminate what he saw as a dangerous influence. No one believed him. He had sent his sister to die out of ambition and fear. The sentence was exile. He would be stripped of all titles, all property, all authority. He would be sent to a distant colony world and forbidden from ever returning to the core systems. Mercy of a sort. Many had called for his execution. As Taemon was led away, he looked at Hana one last time. She saw no remorse in his eyes, just bitter resentment. He would never understand what she had become, what the empire needed to become. The question of succession remained. Empress Bora's middle daughter, Jiwan, had no interest in ruling. She was a scientist, happy in her laboratory. The traditional line of succession was broken. The Empress made an announcement that shocked the empire. She was naming Hana as crown princess and heir to the throne. It violated 10,000 years of tradition. The youngest child, a daughter who had transformed herself into a warrior, would one day rule the Velthir Empire. The announcement divided the empire once more. But this time the majority supported it. Hana had proven herself in ways no traditional heir ever had. She had fought for her people. She had nearly died for them. She had shown that the Velthir could evolve, could adapt, could become more than they had been. The Phoenix Initiative expanded rapidly. Within a year, 5,000 warriors had completed training. Within 2 years, 20,000. The program evolved, incorporating lessons learned from Velthara and the mission to the Bloodfang. The Velthir were becoming a warrior culture, not abandoning their intellectual traditions but adding physical prowess to their capabilities. Doyun was granted full citizenship and elevated to High Commander of the Phoenix Forces. He worked with Hana to transform the entire military doctrine. They didn't abandon the Velthir advantages in technology and psychic power. Instead, they built a military that combined mental and physical strength, creating something unique in the galaxy. Other species noticed. Some approached the Velthir with new respect. Others approached with new fear.